Awesome. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Culture, Arts and Media panel of KORUM's 2021 annual conference. My name is Lena and I'm a Harvard student and your moderator for this panel. So this year's Culture, Arts and Media panel will dive into the world of filmmaking and Hollywood and the relationship between these industries and the Korean and wider Asian identities. We'll explore the recent success of Korean-centered films like Minari and ask what role casting plays in diverse media representation. So our featured speaker today is Julia Kim. So today, Julia will share her personal experiences as an independent casting director and also share advice for young people thinking of breaking into this industry. So before we get started, I want to give a quick bio of Julia and her impressive career. So the films she's worked on have been recognized by a multitude of top-tier film festivals. Multiple award-winning highlights include Minari, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Spa Night, and Hunter-Gatherer. Julia has also collaborated with world-renowned artist Paul McCarthy to help realize his very ambitious Stagecoach film vision. Outside of her films, Julia has served numerous times on Film Independent's various nominating committees and on the short film jury of the LA Film Festival. Last year in 2020, Julia was invited into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. She also serves as a member of the Casting Society of America's Equity and Entertainment Committee and continues to champion inclusion with a side project called InvAsianLA that helps inspiring Asian actors learn to better navigate the Hollywood landscape. So a very impressive bio, Julia. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So we're going to be going through our questions now, and I welcome our attendees to send in your questions throughout the panel in the Q&A section. So our first question, Julia, just to help us get to know you a little bit more, could you share the trajectory of your career journey with us? You know, how did you get into the film industry and what brought you to casting in particular?
Happy accident. I knew that I wanted to get into the entertainment industry. I am a Southern California native, LA native, and it is our industry, but it doesn't mean it's any easier to step into it. So my way in was through animation. And I worked as a production assistant, which basically means AKA grunt work, but still learning the ropes of how production operates. And then ultimately working on The Simpsons during their heyday. So I worked with a lot of top-notch animation directors and learned about story and execution and what makes a joke successful and just how to pack 30 minutes of a story. So that was really educational, but I was creatively unfulfilled on the production side of things. So I started to explore other avenues, and I saw an anonymous ad in the trades, and it was for a casting office. And it ended up being one of the top casting directors in our business, David Rubin, who is currently our president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts. And it was back in the days of headshots being messengered or mailed in. So I sat on the floor pretty much for most of the summer, opening up every envelope as they came in big piles. And that was my education, opening up envelopes and learning who represented what kinds of actors, and learning how to deal with representatives, checking availability on actors that we were ideas on a list, but seeing if they were available for the dates of our project, and just general lingo in the business and casting in particular. I really sparked to it. And basically David was a wonderful mentor and recognized that I had a skill set for it, and he recommended me for my first paying job, and it hasn't stopped since.
That's so awesome. And it's so cool that you had such a great experience with that mentor. I think All of us, that's what we look for. We look for someone to guide us in our career trajectory. So that's so cool to hear. And I guess the next question we have is, could you just walk us through a day in your life as an independent casting director? I have to imagine that it's such a unique job with so many experiences.
It is a unique job, and there are no same days. Every day presents something new, and that is also challenging but exciting. I guess it would start with what project I'm working on. If I'm working with the director who is actor savvy versus an actor who I need to educate a little bit on the types of actors that are out there that could be right for his project. It depends on the budget of the project and what actors I think we could wrangle and would be interested in the material. It depends on, we walk this fine balance where, of course, the producer always wants as many famous names in every role as possible to get audiences to be interested in a film. And so, I always try to fulfill best actor for the job and try to find an actor that would excite the producer and the director and audiences. And a lot of them are emerging and maybe very common names for me, but that doesn't mean that audiences out there, know who this actor is. And so we have a lot of discussion. I really love to work on things that welcome collaboration. I work with a lot of directors that look to me for my ideas. I present ideas that feel very appropriate, but then it's my job to sometimes think outside the box and bring in some experimental ideas and some left of center ideas. And it really is such a unique job because I get to deep dive into whatever particular world the script is talking about or telling. I've gone into skateboarders to exotic dancers to kids on the spectrum. I mean, I just deep dive into whatever world there is. And so I could go down a rabbit hole online. I scour social media. I'm looking through magazines and ripping out articles all the time. And it's just a very unique job in that there is no same days.
Right, that's so cool. And it almost sounds more proactive than just, waiting in a room, waiting for people to send
Oh,
in their
well, we do
project.
watch a lot of self-tapes. So
Yeah.
after we do the outreach, we give them the scenes or the audition scene or something to test their skills. Sometimes we don't, if I'm looking outside of the traditional professional actor, database, then I will ask for them to talk a little bit about something that they're excited to talk about, just so that I can feel what they are like on camera and if they're comfortable on camera and what their body language is doing. And, we customize it for kids or octogenarians. I mean, it's just I've gone from 80-year-olds to 8-year-olds, so we just need to customize it accordingly.
Right, that makes sense. So now that we have a grasp of your career and journey, let's talk about Minari. So how, first of all, did you get involved in this project?
I had worked with Christina O, who is a Korean American producer, and I had worked on a film called The Last Black Man in San Francisco a year before. And she had told me about this project that was percolating, but when she made the introduction to Isaac about a year after she told me about it, we had discussions about what he had in mind and what his vision was. And then things really progressed quite rapidly from there. And that's not usually the case. Sometimes independent projects do languish. And for various reasons, looking for the right talent, looking for the financing. Luckily, this one had the support behind it. And Stephen was in early talks because he actually brought the script to Christina. He and Isaac, they're kind of related. They had their cousins-in-law by complete coincidence. Stephen's wife is Isaac's cousin. And so he never really wanted to take advantage of that relationship and approach Stephen with the script, but somehow Stephen got it through their agent and he just fell in love with it. And he just kind of fast tracked it and got it into the hands of the right producer. And she saw and recognized what a special story it was. And it's really her that was steering the ship in keeping it authentic and having an American production be over 80% in Korean. That there's so many different decisions that could have derailed the beauty and the charm of the story, but it didn't. She stuck to her guns, and I just think, A24 and Plan B are just top notch for that reason, that they recognize keeping something. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like this one just on the page was magical and they kept it intact.
Right. And so I actually want to speak to something you just mentioned about it being an American production, but predominantly in the Korean language. And so I can imagine that was unique. And did you personally come across any challenges in terms of casting and the language requirement, or were there any unusual kind of hoops that you had to jump through there?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I grew up similarly, and one of the special things that the whole team that worked on Minari binds us together is that we all had a personal connection to the story. We grew up with immigrant parents, and a lot of us did speak our native tongue in the home, but was the conduit to the outside world with the English language for our parents that didn't speak it. I know I was. So these days, finding a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old that could speak seamlessly bilingual like that, it definitely felt daunting. And I had 5 weeks to find these kids, and they're the heart of the story. And luckily, I'm from Los Angeles, and we have a very big Korean population here. And so I knew I hit the streets and I knew where to hit. It was pre-pandemic when the casting process was happening. The movie itself debuted right when the pandemic hit, but the casting process, I was still able to physically go to places and engage the parents, the school teachers, churches, and I found a Korean language school that was close by, and they were in session. And so I would go there weekly and stand with the parents as the kids streamed out, and I had flyers in my hand. And if I saw a kid that intrigued me or felt like I should check them out, I would engage the parent our parents and explain. It was a lot of going outside of your normal acting circle. Professional acting circle takes a lot of explanation, a lot of patience, some trust, and just letting them know that this was a worthwhile situation or a project for them to invest their kids in. So yeah, I mean, and then I went to the Korean newspaper, and they put out an article right away. They blasted it out nationwide. It started to even filter to South Korea. So after you wait a certain amount of period for word to start spreading, and then Koreans telling other Koreans, and then parents telling other parents, you just kind of wait for all that work to start resonating, and then the self tapes start pouring in, and then it's about watching all of them.
Cool. That actually It's so cool that you actually went to a language school. I went to one when I was a kid, and I can't imagine how excited I must have been if a casting director was there for this major film. Yeah. So, something that's maybe more of a fun question. What was it like working with this range, with your cast? You have very famous household names and award-winning actors like Stephen Yeun and Yoon Yo-jung. And then you also have very young, kids. They don't have a lot of experience like Alan Kim. So what was it like kind of bringing all these people together? And what kind of different strategies did you have to employ for different people?
Well, Stephen has a beautiful way of disarming and making everyone in the room feel comfortable. So, and Isaac has such a gentle and nurturing spirit as well. So, we first assembled a short list of candidates once I looked through everybody, all the tapes. Then I present to Isaac the ones that I think are strong enough to deliver what he's seeking. And then we put them sort of through some short exercises and drills if they're able to maintain a character and realize the difference between acting and being themselves. Um, we did have candidates scattered about. Usually it's great to have them sitting in the room. So I was actually already ahead of the game with the Zoom and video virtual, corresponding and interacting. So we had patched some kids in from, like, Noelle lives in West Virginia, and I didn't meet her until Sundance. We only dealt with her exactly the way I'm dealing with you now. But Alan was from the Bay Area. And so ultimately, when we thought Alan was looking like the best candidate, we invited Stephen to come and do some chemistry, father-son scenes with him. And then we slowly brought in Noelle, and we had a little sibling bickery, kind of realistic back and forth. And he, embodied the lovable hellion that was on the page. That was really important. That was a conversation that Isaac and I had, and Christina and I had, which was that this boy does some things that might be, frowned upon. His antics are certainly antics, and so we needed to remain, he needed to remain endearing and likable throughout, the famous Mountain Dew pee scene for the grandma, and all those kinds of things. And then Noelle had this wonderful combination of being the dutiful older sister with the right touch of disillusionment. And so the two of them, even though they weren't in a room together, had some great chemistry via video. And then Stephen and Alan had great chemistry, and Alan just was a natural. He just took to it right away. And yeah, the rest is history.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. And you can definitely, it's very interesting to hear that you did these chemistry kind of readings beforehand, because you can definitely see that popping off on the screen in the film. So it's all, it's not a coincidence. There's a lot of work going into all of those relationships.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
on set too, they became a family. I know that Isaac really encouraged them to have dinners together and hang out with each other as much as possible. And so that really does translate on screen.
of course, yeah. So now, moving off Minari a little bit and just talking about more about these issues of representation. So for you personally, what has been your experience of, being an Asian woman working in the Hollywood industry? What has that all been like? Have there been particular challenges or alternatively joys? Have there been good moments?
Hmm. I have been very lucky. I have worked on a lot of independent films where the stories have been about marginalized groups or people. And usually when you're working on a project like that, the team behind it, they're pretty cool people. So I didn't ever feel, any microaggression or any of these things that other people have experienced. I always felt very fortunate to be in a collaborative place with a team that really had the best in mind for the project. I always weighed in on representation, but it's not just a blanket thing. Like, it depends on the project. With Minari, it was a very specific assignment because the story was Korean American. So I knew I didn't have flexibility to go outside of that realm because they needed to speak both languages. But that's not always the case. There's other projects that allow some space for a broader representation. And I'm always an advocate for the best actor for the job. So it's more of a, it's just a very macro way to look at it for me. Like, I just feel it's really depends on the project, and I chime in when I think it's appropriate. The joys for me have been that I have worked with such unique filmmakers, starting with Isaac, and then Sean Baker, Andrew On, Cam Archer, Larry Clark, Paul McCarthy, who you mentioned in the intro. Just interesting voices with something unique to add to the landscape, and that's what I strive for.
That's awesome. And on the note of these unique voices that are creating stories, I guess my next question would be, so as a casting director, how do you then strive to create a unique impact on your projects? How do you kind of leave the stamp that is uniquely Julia Kim?
Hmm. Well, I have a knack for finding fresh talent that seems to, Andrew On's piece was way ahead of the curve. It was a story about a young Korean American man's sexual awakening. And there was not, I mean, that was a while back. I mean, the talent roster has grown considerably even since then. But at that time, we really didn't have a large um, uh, roster to select from, and it wasn't a very big budget. I mean, usually when you're telling something different and unique, it's not a blockbuster, it's more of a niche film, and so every dollar is accounted for. And so we didn't have a lot of money to pay this to the lead actor, but in exchange it was going to be a an amazing opportunity for an actor to shine. And, it came to fruition because Joe Sao won Best Breakthrough Performance. They created a special jury award for him, prize for him at Sundance for his performance. And they recognized how special that performance was. And same with Alan. Alan came from, I never acted in my life, from obscurity to, I feel I now have contributed to adding to the Asian talent roster, and Alan is on his merry way, and so is Noelle. I feel like both of them have the chops to take their career as far as they want to. And it just, for me, is just a win-win situation for Hollywood, for Asians, for them, for storytellers. It's just, that's how we just keep growing. And, I'm working on something now, and there's uh, key Asian roles in the series regular roles, and we are struggling with finding the right Asian talent. And I just look forward to the day when we have more than we know what to do with.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that day as well. That would be really good to see. Okay, so on this topic of maybe I would venture to say rising Asian representation in kind of films and filmmaking, as well as more of a legitimate recognition of Asian local art in the mainstream. So obviously, Bong Joon-ho's Parasite and the more recent, success of Minari. With all of this kind of rise, what would you attribute this growing success to? And then on the other hand, do you see this change as lasting, as permanent, or more superficial, especially with the kind of backlash, I would say? We've seen a rise of cases of hateful attacks against the AAPI community. So do you see this representation increase as something that's here to stay, or is it just a kind of blip in a continuous decline?
Well, I think that the projects need to be good. I mean, that's why we're talking about Parasite and Minari, because they're excellent work. So I think the quality always needs to be there, or else we wouldn't be talking about those projects. And I think it's never, I don't see it taking a step backwards. I'm excited about all this accountability and talk about representation. And, many people feel it's about time, but I've been doing this a long time, and I've been I'm so encouraged by the numbers of people behind the camera and in front of the camera. And that is how we're going to keep telling stories of representation. We need writers in the writers' room that understand the stories that they're telling, and knowing the difference between Asians, because we're not one monolith. We are, we're very different, and we have different characteristics that are uniquely ours. And so, I think you need writers in the writers' room and directors that understand how to tell the story in a way that's accurate and authentic. And like I said, I just feel that that is happening right. I mean, I see it. I'm working on something now for Amazon that is a series where it's based on an Asian book, and the series regulars are, 5 out of the 8 are Asian characters, and there's an interracial marriage where the husband is Asian and the wife is Caucasian, and that's a huge leap forward. So all of that is very encouraging for me and very exciting.
Yeah, as it is for the rest of us, and we'll be looking forward to that project when it's released. So I think maybe stepping off this issue now, what advice generally would you give to our listeners and the younger generation who are perhaps kind of hoping to break into casting or the film industry more generally? Because I think there's this conception that it's very hard to break into and you kind of need to know people and that kind of thing. So, what would your advice be to people who are starting off with nothing?
Well, practice your craft, and whatever that is, and get really just, there's no reason to be idle. You can always practice your craft and perfect it. And also, there's so many ways to get involved. There's internships like I applied for. If you go to a university, there's theater and productions, and you can always work behind the scenes. If you're not a performer, you can help build sets. You can work with the composer. There's just, I would say, embrace getting experience in every aspect of the entertainment industry, because it's got so many tentacles and you really don't know where you might fit in. I mean, casting was a completely accidental profession for me. I knew I wanted to get into entertainment, but that was just not by design that I fell into casting. And so I say, experience it all, embrace the happy accidents, just try to get your foot in the door any way you can, even if you're not sure you want to get into post production. I mean, I'm at the beginning of a project. Like, I basically start with a script and the director, and we build it, and we build this tapestry and bring the story to life, but then it is being also brought to life in so many other ways through music and sound and cinematography and the props and the production design. I mean, the trailer in Minari and the setting of this family's home in this trailer is just as much of a co-star as the actors themselves. And so all of these things really comprise a successful project. And sometimes you just got to do your best job and hope for the best, and give it your kiss, your blessing, and then and off it goes, and you hope that it all comes together beautifully. And it doesn't always work out that way, but always just wait and be ready for your own opportunity as well.
That sounds like very good advice. And we actually had some audience questions come in while you were so graciously answering these questions. So one of these questions was, again, on the topic of representation. When do you think we'll see Asian or minority actors in roles that have no necessary relationship to like heritage? So when are we going to see just a random neighbor being non-white, and these people filling roles that have been traditionally default white?
Right. Again, I think that's happening. John Cho did it in Searching, and I don't think that had anything to do with him being Korean. He just happened to be a Korean father whose daughter went missing. I think that is happening more and more. I can't name the projects off the top of my head, but we are striving for that, and I believe that everybody wants that. And we know that you know, always referring. I mean, Stephen Yun talked about this, about sort of being asked that over and over again. How does it feel to be the first Korean American man to actor to be nominated for an actor for an Oscar? I just think we're already headed that way. It can't happen. Some people just feels like it's not happening fast enough. I think progress takes time, but that's why I want to speak to your audience, because I want to encourage and support the future voices that are coming into this business and show interest in this business. And that's truly how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I agree with you. I do think it's already happening. And change will always be slow, but as long as it doesn't go backwards, is what I
Right.
always think. So another question we have is one that's potentially controversial. But we'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So there was a little bit of controversy and pretty widespread calling out and criticism of when at the Oscars, I believe, Minari was put under the foreign language film category. And so there was pushback against this because it was telling a fundamentally American story and those kind of criticisms. So what were your thoughts on this, and how did you feel when you heard that news?
Well, I just thought Isaac handled it so beautifully out there, because he was asked that many times. And what it did was it started a conversation, and it challenged that notion. And it put a spotlight on that topic. And we are talking about it now. And I think, there was some strategy I mean, it was a choice by the people who submitted the film to put it in that category, and we won the Golden Globe. So, there was some strategy behind it, but it also jump started uh, a lot of conversation about this. So all in all, I think it's just always good to have a discussion, and for something to prompt discussion.
Yeah, that's true. There's always value in opening a conversation, even if it doesn't happen the way that everyone wanted or desired. So I think maybe our last question for today is how can people who are not directly working in the entertainment industry still support inclusive and representative casting in future projects?
Show up, go see it, tell your friends, support the project. Like you need, I mean, it's a business, so we need to have it be successful. We need it to make money. So if you hear about something, or like with Minari or any project that has more of what you'd like to see, go see it, tell your friends, buy tickets, support it, spread the word, put it on your social media. Just make it so successful that Hollywood cannot ignore it and use the excuse that we tried it and it was unsuccessful.
Yeah, that's very good advice, and something that we can all very tangibly follow, I think. So that, I think, brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you so much to our audience for attending, and thank you so, so much to Julia for graciously being our featured speaker. I think we learned so much from you, and it was really valuable to hear about your thoughts and experience. So for our audience, you can check out Julia's website at castingbyjuliakim.com. That's also her Instagram handle. And please, everyone, check out her new project that's coming out soon. With Lu Wang, was it?
Lulu
And
one.
Lu Wang?
Lulu, farewell. Yeah.
Yeah, from the farewell. So that's going to be very exciting. So Julia, you can hop off now if you'd like. And yes, we have that link dropped in the
Bye,
chat.
everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.